صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع وجوه يومئذ ناعمة لسعيها راضية في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم صدق الله العلي العظيم. الفاتحة.
ومحمد وآل محمد صلوات. آل عمران کہاں اور زندان کہاں یہ بہن قید ہوئی تو نہ آیا غازی جب ردا سر سے چھینی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی جب ردا سر سے چھینی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی ہم کو پانی نہ ملے تیری خوشبو تو رہے تیرے بازو نہ کتے چاہے مشکی زچدے یہ مگر ہو نہ سکا تیرے بازو ہے جدا مجھ پہ ہے تشنا لبی تو نہ آیا غازی جب ردا سر سے چھینی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی دھوپ میں تو تھا شجر تجھ سے آباد تھا اگر ہے برہنہ میرا سر، کیا نہیں تجھ کو قبر، اے علمدار وفا، اس بہن کو بخدا تجھ سے دارس تھی بدی، تو نہ یا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ یا غازی، آ گئی شام علم لٹ گئے اہل حرم، ریت پر جلتی ہوئی ہو گیا ٹھنڈا علم، پرس دینے کے لیے مجھ سے ملنے کے لیے آ گئے بابا علی، تو نہ یا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ غازی، کیا کہوں شعر میرے بیریدہ ہم کو لیے، یہ مسلمان سارے شہر در شہر گئے، خلقت کوفہ کبھی، خلقت شام کبھی، اور رہا ہم پہ ہنسی، تو نہ یا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ یا غازی، آل عمران کہاں اور زندان کہاں، یہ بہن قید ہوئی، تو نہ یا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ یا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ یا غازی، تو نہ یا غازی، ومحمد وآل محمد صلوات۔ سورۃ المبارکۃ الفاتحہ۔
بر آل نبی اولاد علی باواز بلند صلوات. کربلا میں کیا بتائیں ہم نے کیا کیا دیکھا. کربلا میں کیا بتائیں ہم نے کیا کیا دیکھا. ہم نے لاکھوں میں شبیر کو تنہا دیکھا. کربلا میں کیا بتائیں ہم نے کیا کیا دیکھا. شہ نے جب سینہ اکبر سے نکالا نیزہ. شہ نے جب سینہ اکبر سے نکالا نیزہ. ساتھ آتے ہوئے اکبر کا کلیجہ دیکھا. ساتھ آتے ہوئے اکبر کا کلیجہ دیکھا. کربلا میں کیا بتائیں ہم نے کیا کیا دیکھا. لاشیں ہر ایک کی شہ دین اٹھا لائے مگر. لاشیں ہر ایک کی شہ دین اٹھا لائے مگر. ایک بن ہاتھوں کے لاشا لب دریا دیکھا. ایک بن ہاتھوں کے لاشا لب دریا دیکھا. کربلا میں کیا بتائیں ہم نے کیا کیا دیکھا. اپنے کاندھے پہ اٹھاتے تھے محمد جس کو. اپنے کاندھے پہ اٹھاتے تھے محمد جس کو. اس کا بیگو رو کفن ریت پہ لاشا دیکھا. اس کا بیگو رو کفن ریت پہ لاشا دیکھا. کربلا میں کیا بتائیں ہم نے کیا کیا دیکھا. آگ امت نے لگائی ہے انہی کے گھر کو. آگ امت نے لگائی ہے انہی کے گھر کو. جن کے دروازے پہ جبریل ٹھہرتا دیکھا. جن کے دروازے پہ جبریل ٹھہرتا دیکھا. کربلا میں کیا بتائیں ہم نے کیا کیا دیکھا. ہائے اس بالی سکینہ کو کہانی گلا آنکھوں سے کٹتا دیکھا، جس نے بابا کا گلا آنکھوں سے کٹتا دیکھا، کربلا میں کیا بتائیں ہم نے کیا کیا دیکھا، کیوں نہ اشکوں کی جگہ خون بہائے عابد، کیوں نہ اشکوں کی جگہ خون بہائے عابد، جس نے مادر کا ہے جلتے ہوئے برکھا دیکھا، جس نے مادر کا ہے جلتے ہوئے برکھا دیکھا، کربلا میں کیا بتائیں ہم نے کیا کیا دیکھا، ہم نے لاکھوں میں شبیر کو تنہا دیکھا، کربلا میں کیا بتائیں ہم نے کیا کیا دیکھا، صلوات بر محمد۔
بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔ السلام علیکم جمیعا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ۔ روحانی مجلس announcements. Majlis is by the family of Marum Ramzan Ali, Muhammad Ali Walji for the Isale Sawab of Marum Ramzan Ali, Muhammad Ali Walji, Marum Muhammad Ali Bhai Walji, Maruma Shirin Bhai Muhammad Ali Walji, Maruma Maryam Bhai Muhammad Ali Walji, Maruma Salma Bhai Walji, Marum Ali Bhai Bimji, Maruma Kulsum Bhai Bimji, Marumins of Walji family, Marumins of Bimji family and Kul Marumins. You humbly requested to recite Surah Fatiha for Kul Marumins Al-Fatiha.
الصلوات۔ نعرہ تکبیر، نعرہ رسالت، نعرہ حیدری، زینب دی کا قیام، زینب دی کا قیام، زینب حق کا پیام، زینب حق کا پیام، زینب نائب امام، زینب نائب امام، زینب غربت کا نام، صلوات۔
Mu'mineen, we are very honored to have Sheikh MohammedAli Muraj for the Ayaam Zainabiya Majlis program. Please let's welcome him with a loud Nare Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد. Before we commence with the first of the majalis of Ayaam Zainabiya, I understand that this is the first time I am returning back to the lovely community of Peterborough after the demise of Marhum Ramzan Uncle Walji. And before I start, I thought it's quite important for me to kind of state that over 10 years ago, when I started my journey in community service and in voluntary in terms of the Executive Council in Leicester Jamaat within the Treasury team, I had the pleasure and honor to meet Marhum Ramzan Uncle, and I learned a lot from him. And I was really inspired from him because he was a veteran in community service and he was already serving as the treasurer of Peterborough Jamaat at that time. And recently, alhamdulillah, when I was again blessed with the opportunity to continue the community service and was elected as the honorary treasurer of College, again, I was really privileged to serve alongside Ramzan Uncle. And Ramzan Uncle and I worked really well together, very closely together on a lot of the items. And so I've taken a lot of inspiration from him and I've learned a lot from him. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise his status in paradise, for him to be able to continue to serve those infallible individuals that he so dearly loved and so dearly served in his entire life. And with that, I'd like to request a Suratul Mubarakatul Fatiha for Marhum Ramzan Uncle and for all our Marhumin. Suratul Mubarakatul Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. لقد جاءت رسل ربنا بالحق. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء المرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وبآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. وصل على صاحب الدعوة النبوية والثولة الحيدرية والإسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والصبر السجادية وآثار الباقرية ومؤاثر الصادقية وعلوم الكاظمية وهجج رضوية وجود التقوية والنقاوة النقوية والهيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية والقائمة بالحق. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم ومحكم كتاب المجيد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فستذكرون ما أقول لكم وأفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد. فوقاه الله سيئات ما مكروا وحاق بآل فرعون سوء العذاب. the 40th chapter of the Holy Quran is known as Surah Al-Ghafir. And it is also known as Surah Al-Mu'min, the chapter of the believer. Who is this mu'min? Who is this believer? Who is this individual that the Holy Quran refers to as mu'min? If we look into our hadith literature, if we look into our books, Shi'i and Sunni, we see that this word mu'min, which is referred to as Surah Al-Mu'min, is in fact refers to a believer of Al-Fir'aun. In fact, the Holy Quran refers to him as Mu'min Al-Fir'aun. And his name is known as Hizqil or Hizqiyal according to our traditions. Who is this Hizqil? Who is Hizqiyal? This individual was the cousin of Pharaoh. He was the finance minister of Pharaoh's empire, and so he had all of the treasury responsibilities. He was one of the closest of friends of Pharaoh, and at the same time, he was a close confidant of Pharaoh. Pharaoh would love to talk to him. He would take his counsel. He would take his advice. So much so, Pharaoh would proclaim to his courtiers and to his empire that if I am to pass away, then the Pharaoh, then your lord, then the emperor after me is going to be my cousin, Hizqil. And the Holy Quran refers to him as Mu'min al-Fir'aun. And if we turn towards the books of Shi'i and Sunni literature, we see that the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been quoted to have said, and again, like I said, this has been narrated in both of the books. He says that there are 3 Siddiqs, there are 3 individuals who are known as truthful ones. The first is Habib al-Najjar, Mu'min al-Yasin. The second one is Hizqil, Mu'min al-Fir'aun. And the third is Ali bin Abi Talib, who is superior to the former 2. Or if we look into the tradition of Imam al-Sadiq, he says that Mu'min of al-Fir'aun, Hizqil, is going to be one of the 17 individuals that will return back with the Imam of our time. And therefore, we understand this individual by the name of Hizqil is one that has a lot of prominence, not just in the Holy Quran, but that of the Ahadith as well. We all know the story of Musa alayhi salam when Musa returns back from Madian to the land of Egypt, and the magicians bring forth Iman in the Lord of Musa alayhi salam. And at that time, Hizqil also professes and proclaims his Iman in the Lord of Musa alayhi salam. And therefore, we understand from this slight analysis that Hizqil not only enjoyed a very important position within the court of Pharaoh, but he is referred to as Mu'min, as a believer of the people of Pharaoh. At the same time, he is revered in the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt, including that of the Holy Prophet. And an individual who has been revered and has an entire chapter named after him, no doubt requires some time that is spent over him, some analysis, so that we're able to delve into his life and try and understand what pearls of wisdom, many an insight and lessons that we may be able to derive from his life. And therefore, the topic of discussion that I have chosen for tonight's discussion is titled Mu'min of Al-Fir'aun. And inshallah, we'll try and delve into a series of lessons, possibly 4, possibly 5, and try and see what lessons we are able to take from his life practically that we may be able to apply within our lives. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, before even continuing with the discussion, the first lesson that we must take from Mu'min of Al-Fir'aun is the following. Now, we have just discussed who Mu'min Al-Fir'aun was. He was a friend of Pharaoh. He was a cousin of Pharaoh. He was a single step away from this entire wealth and power that he could have ever wielded. And at the same time, despite him having access to all of the luxuries in the world that had to offer, despite him having access to all of the wealth that this world could offer, despite him having access to all of the power that this world could have ever offered, he still remains in the faith and in the belief of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just imagine this thing. He has everything that he could ever want. He is the successor to the heir to the throne, which means he is a single step away from man-made deity. He is a single step away from being called God upon earth. And so, this HICTV had everything at his disposal. But yet, he believes and he has his faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He could have been influenced by the society that he lived in. He could have been influenced by the community that he lived in. He could have been influenced by the circumstances that he was enveloped by. And those were dire circumstances. But yet, he remained steadfast in his iman, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until his very last breath. And a very similar example can be seen of that of Lady Asiya, again, the wife of none other than one of the most wicked and evil individuals of the time. And again, despite having access to all of the luxuries, all of the wealth and all of the power that this world could have offered to Asiya, Asiya did not let the man whom she had married define herself. She did not let any wealth, power or luxury define who she was. And yet she made sure that her mind, her soul, her heart was independent of the influence of her own and continued to believe in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, one of the first lessons that we may be able to derive from the illustrious life of none other than HICTV is no matter what circumstances you may be in, no matter what place you may be in, you don't have an excuse. If HICTV can be steadfast in his religion, then let's be frank, let's be honest ourselves. Yes, we lead a hard life. Yes, life in the West may not be easy. Yes, life in our schools, universities, place of work, place of society may not necessarily be easy, and no one says it's easy. But if HICTV and Asiya could do it in the most dire of circumstances, then no doubt this is an inspiration, a lesson, and something that we may be able to take practically within our lives. This is lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, HICTV teaches us the concept and the importance of the concepts of Taqiyya and Tawriyya. Taqiyya is discretionary concealment of one's faith. Tawriyya is, another word for Tawriyya is half-truth, where a person says one thing, the other individual understands something else, and he meant something completely different altogether. And again, HICTV was able to practice Taqiyya and Tawriyya not only to save his own life, but also to save the life of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Now imagine being in a scenario where you are literally in the innermost circle of Fir'aun, one of the greatest tyrants this world may have ever seen. This means you have access to a lot of knowledge. You have access to a lot of data. You have access to a lot of strategies and plans of Fir'aun. So should you wish, you're able to support your community and be that of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. For example, what do I mean? Surah Al-Qasas, chapter number 28, verse number 20. We know the story where there were two individuals having a brawl, having a fight with one another. One of those individuals was an Israelite, a man from Banu Israel. And so when these two individuals were having a fight, this man turns to Musa alayhi salam and he says, "Oh Musa, help me." So Musa comes forth, he gives a blow to the individual, he punches him once, and the other individual, who is a man of Fir'aun, dies instantly. And at that time, Surah Al-Qasas, chapter number 28, verse number 20 says what? A man comes saying, "Go run away, for Fir'aun and his men are going to kill you, for I am one of your sincerest of advisors." And then the story of Musa alayhi salam happens, that he goes to Madian, marries the daughter of Shu'aib. 10 years or so later, Allah says, "Idhhab ila Fir'auna innahu tagha," come back to Fir'aun. Who was that individual who the Quran refers to as sincere advisors? None other than MohammedAli Fir'aun. HICTV You see, when you are in the inner circle of Fir'aun, you have access to all of the strategies, you have access to all of the plans. And so he was able to, in that situation, through performing Taqiyya and Tawriyah, support Musa alayhi salam and save his life. But at the same time, do you think it was easy for Hizqeel to believe in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but to live in a society that sees an individual as their Lord? Was it easy for Hizqeel to believe in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but communicate with Fir'aun, an individual who calls himself Ana Rabbukumul A'la, I am the Lord Most High? Was it easy for Hizqeel to practice Taqiyya, conceal his faith with amongst his family and his community? No, of course it wasn't. But yet, Hizqeel practices Taqiyya and believes in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, what Hizqeel would do is he would find peace and solitude by going far up above in the mountains, trying to seek some solitude and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by himself. And in one such occasion, it so happens that Hizqeel goes into the mountains to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Fir'aun, he exclaims, "Where is Hizqeel? I am in need of an urgent matter that I must discuss with my advisor." And of course, Hizqeel was nowhere to be found. And so he says to all his soldiers, "Go and find Hizqeel and bring him to me as soon as possible." And so from the soldiers that had gone, 2 of the soldiers asking people realized that Hizqeel is in so-and-so area. And so they realized that this is Hizqeel's host and this is the mountain, so Hizqeel must have ascended the mountain. And so they disembarked their host, they try climbing up the mountain, they ascend the mountain, and from afar they see Hizqeel praying and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a manner that they don't worship Fir'aun. And so they realized that Hizqeel was worshipping a Lord other than Fir'aun. And so now as soon as they saw him, Hizqeel also realized that he is being spied upon. Someone's looking at him. So he makes a distraction. The animals start running, the birds start flying, and he is able to run away from that place. However, the 2 soldiers of Fir'aun had already seen Hizqeel. And so now they have a conversation with one another and they say, "Can you believe it? Hizqeel, the cousin of Pharaoh, the heir to the throne, is worshipping a Lord other than Fir'aun." Can you imagine the reward Fir'aun would give for this piece of information? And so the person says, "I am going to go and report him to Fir'aun." The other individual, the second of the soldiers, he said, "Look, Hizqeel has done nothing but good to us. He's a good, noble individual. If you and I go to Fir'aun and complain to him, what's Fir'aun going to do? He's going to kill him. You and I will lose a good individual. You and I will lose a good human being." But the first individual says, "No, I would really like a reward from the Pharaoh, and so I shall go and complain to him." And so this is what they do. They go to Fir'aun, they complain to him. Fir'aun, with rage in his eyes, sitting on his throne, sees Hizqeel entering the court. He says, "Hizqeel, come here." Now imagine Fir'aun is rage. He's angry, right? And he tells to the soldier that, "Look," he grabs hold of him. Hizqeel is my cousin, he is my finance minister. If you are trying to create a discord between Hizqeel and I, that I'm going to make such an example of you that people will tell tales for years to come. And if Hizqeel is indeed worshipping a Lord other than me, then I'm going to make an example of him, so people will tell tales for him." So this is Fir'aun's inner circle being desecrated. So with rage in his eyes, Hizqeel enters the court. Fir'aun calls upon him, "Hizqeel, come here. What is it that I am hearing about you?" Hizqeel says, "What do you mean? What do you hear about me?" And at this point, Hizqeel recites a dua. And the contents of this dua we will come to a little bit later. So Fir'aun says, this individual says, "You worship a Lord, a creator, a master, other than myself. Is that true?" Hizqeel says to Fir'aun, completely calm, "Fir'aun, how long have you known me for? Have you ever seen or heard me lie?" Fir'aun says, "No, I've never seen you lie. I've never heard you lie." He says, "Very well. then who is it that told you that I worship a Lord other than you? He says, this soldier here told me that you worship someone else. He says, fine, bring him forward. Ask him this question. He says, what? Ask him who is his creator. So Fir'aun looks at him and he says, who is your creator? The soldier says, Fir'aun, you are my creator. Hiskil says, very well, ask him, who is your nourisher? So he says, oh man, who is your nourisher? So the soldier says, Fir'aun, you are my nourisher. Hiskil says, very well, ask him, who is his sustainer? And so Fir'aun looks at him and says, who is your sustainer? And so the man says, Fir'aun, you are my sustainer. So Hiskil says, oh Fir'aun, you bear witness. And there are people around the court saying, oh Fir'aun, you bear witness. His Lord is my Lord. His creator is my creator. His nourisher and sustainer is my nourisher and sustainer. And the entire court was amazed by his proclamation. Fir'aun himself was impressed. He was like, wow, I doubted him. And Fir'aun actually made an example of this soldier who had reported him. And so by doing this, Tawriya, practicing Tawriya, Hiskil was not only able to save the lives of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, but he was able to save his own life. And so we understand that the concepts of Taqiyya, the concepts of Tawriya are there as part and parcel of our faith. In fact, if you'll turn to the Holy Quran, Surah An-Nahl, verse number 106. We all know the story of Ammar Yasir. But that of his father Yasir and Sumayya were also one of the first shuhada, in the religion of Islam. And what happened is the polytheists got hold of them, they would torture them, and they would martyr them and murder them. And when the turn of Ammar Yasir came, and his turn came to be tortured, Ammar Yasir, after a while, he said whatever words that the polytheists of the time made him say so. And so he escaped from the torture and from the death of those individuals, And so when the companions heard, they started spreading news and rumors that, look, Ammar Yasir has turned away from the fold of Islam. And so the news reaches the Holy Prophet. And again Ammar Yasir goes to the Holy Prophet and he says, O Prophet of Allah, look, I have said these words that I really shouldn't have. So the Prophet says, look, when you said those words, whatever you did, what was the state of your heart? Were you still steadfast in the belief of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He says, yes. By Allah, I still had my faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I only said that so that I'm able to escape from the clutches of these individuals. And so the Holy Prophet says that later, even if you are meant to say these words in order to get away from death or torture, then say so, because you are a believer through and through. And this has been narrated in Surah An-Nahl, verse number 106. And again, the concepts of Taqiyya and Tawriya are there within our books. Or for example, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, has been quoted to have said that discretionary concealment is my faith and the faith of my forefathers. And whoever does not believe in this has no religion. This is a shield that an individual is to use. For if the mu'min of Al Fir'aun hadn't used this shield, hadn't used Taqiyya, then he would have lost his life. And so we understand that Taqiyya, of course, conditions being met, is a concept that we have that we can practice. Especially at a time where we are a minority, especially where we're living in a rule of a tyrannical, oppressive rulers. Alhamdulillah, this is a place where we have the freedom of speech, we have the freedom of practice. But should we be in such a state, then these are concepts that we have at our disposal. This is lesson number 2. Let's move on to lesson number 3. So far, we've discussed lesson number 1, that's Fir'aun's individual, Hiskil, MohammedAli Fir'aun, practiced his faith in the most dire of circumstances. Number 2, we understood the concepts of Taqiyya and Tawriya through Hiskil, MohammedAli Fir'aun. Number 3, the lesson that we turn from him is how to approach your community, how to propagate your religion, how to influence the individuals around you. For example, what happened to the story of Musa? Allah reveals unto Musa, "Idhab ila Fir'auna innahu tagha." Go unto Pharaoh, for verily he has transgressed all of the bounds. And so Musa turns up with 2 miracles. The miracle of the hand under the armpit which illuminates, and the miracle of the staff. And when the magicians bring forward their magic, Musa's miracle of the staff overpowers the magics of the magicians. And so it becomes a point in the court of Fir'aun, the magicians submit to the Lord of Musa alayhi salam. And so in the court of Fir'aun realizes that here my empire is being desecrated, there is a rebellion. So he says, anyone who believes in the message of Musa is to be put to the sword. Those magicians that believed in the message of Musa are to be put to the sword. And Musa alayhi salam himself is to be put to the sword. And at this point, where he realizes, Mu'min of Al Fir'aun, that the life of Prophet Musa alayhi salam is at stake, he then professes his own religion. He then professes his own faith. And he does so in 5 different ways. In the first way, he propagates and he tells the people that, look, and he uses logic and he says, look, let's think rationally. If Musa is lying about his Lord, then we don't need to kill him. If he is lying, then his reputation is tarnished. His lie will catch up to him. Why do we need to kill him? However, if Musa alayhi salam is saying the truth, then we really ought to listen to the guy. Right? That's number 1. Second way he propagated was using the examples of Nuh, Ad and Thamud. And he would say, look, how the people of Nuh, Ad and Thamud were wiped out by the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, if Musa is true, then Allah will wipe us out. Third one, he gave a more contemporary example, that of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. And he says, look, Yusuf was amongst us only a few years ago. And look what happened. We never believed in his message. And when he said the third way that he said, Fir'aun actually said that I'm going to postpone the killing of Musa alayhi salam up until a day where I'm able to construct a tall tower so that I'm able to look for the God of Musa alayhi salam myself. This is the third way that he did. The fourth way he tried to propagate was again a very direct and indirect approach, giving examples. And finally, at the 5th level, he says, and he professes his religion by saying, look, you all bring me to believe in a Lord other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not able to do that. And I believe in the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the third lesson that we take from his deal, from his qiyar, from Mu'min al Fir'aun, is how he uses different approaches through the use of logic, through an indirect, direct approach, through examples of the history, through a more contemporary examples, on how he uses different means to propagate to the people of his time. And this is a very important lesson to not only the muballighs, to not only the visiting speakers of this community and outside, but also to the community members ourselves, as you and I are the ambassadors of the religion of Islam. There are many ways that you and I can propagate the beautiful religion of Islam. But one of the best ways to propagate the religion is by our own akhlaq. There's no point saying that I believe in the Rasulullah, but going out and desecrating his message, not showing the appropriate akhlaq. You may be a master in philosophy, you may be a master in jurisprudence, in history, in whatever field of subject that you may have gained mastery in. But if you don't have akhlaq, one of the first people that they will recognize that how his master was, is they're going to look at you. And the Holy Prophet has said what? إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمُ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Indeed, I have come here to perfect the message of noble morals. Not mahasin al-akhlaq, not good morals. You see, there's a difference between mahasin and makarim. What is that? Good morals is doing good to those individuals that have done good to you. Makarim al-akhlaq, noble morals, is doing good to those individuals that may not have done good to you. And so when we go out to the place of work, to the place of study, to our societies, we don't go out as MohammedAli, Zain, Abbas, etc. We go out as the believer of that individual that was sent as rahmatun lil alamin. And when they see you, they realize what lofty morals the Holy Prophet had brought. Imam Sadiq has said, "Kunu zaynan lana, wa la takunu shaynan alayna." Be a source of ornament for us, not a source of disgrace for us. Habibuna ala nas. Make the people love us. Don't make the people hate us. And so, this was the third lesson that we take from mu'min of Al Fir'aun. Fourth lesson. Now, we just said that he professed his faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At that time, he recites the following verse of the Holy Quran. فَسَتَذْكُرُونَ مَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ. Chapter number 40, Surah Al-Mu'min, verse number 44. And you will remember what I have to tell you now. وَأُفَوِّذُ أَمْرِيَ إِلَى اللَّهِ. And I entrust all of my affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna Allah basirum bil abad. For verily He is all seeing, He is all hearing of His servants. In the following verse, verse number 45, Allah responds to him, فَوَقَاهُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِ مَا مَكَرُوا. And we failed the plans, the evil plans that they, the people of Fir'aun, had plotted. وَحَاقَ بِعَالْ فِرْعَوْنَ سُوءُ الْعَذَابِ. And we enveloped the individuals, the people of Fir'aun, in severe punishment. Now, before I get to the verse of HICTV and before I get to the verse of the dua of HICTV, what are the four most important things that we have in our lives? What are the first things that people no doubt will put up high up in our list is wealth, assets, cash, right? And if we have some cash, we're going to try and protect our wealth. We're going to try and protect our cash. And we may even put it in our banks, thinking that our banks will keep it safe. Of course, from 2008's credit crunch, we realized that our cash may not be safe in our banks as well. But cash and wealth is pretty much high up in our list of priorities. After wealth comes our health. If we are slightly ill, we run to the hospitals, we run to the doctors, we run to the pharmacies, and we are happy to spend our wealth to regain back our health. What's more important than our wealth? What's more important than our health? No doubt our children. Right? We always advise them, look, don't take any candy from strangers, don't talk to strangers. And if anything was to come to our children, we'd be more than happy to spend all of our wealth and our health to safeguard and protect our children. Now, what is more important than wealth, health, and children? It is no doubt the faith that we have. This is the iman that we have, right? Should the day come, we always make the proclamation that I am ready to sacrifice my wealth, health, and my children for my iman, for my faith. Now, we are at a juncture where the entire court of Fir'aun is filled by his people. There is a rebellion from amongst the magicians. Fir'aun has said, kill them. Kill Musa. Kill anyone who supports Musa. Here, HICTV, who is one of the most innermost individual within the circle of Fir'aun, he just professed his faith in a Lord other than Fir'aun. Now, what do you think Fir'aun did to him? He says, وَأُفَوِّذُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. I entrust all of my affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah responds. He promises, فَوَقَاهُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِ مَا مَكَرُوا. And I protected his deal, and I made all of the evil plans of Fir'aun and his people failed. So here, the answer is clear. His deal said something, Allah protected him. How did Allah protect him? How did Allah protect him? Let me give you the following example. A few years ago, we had the issue of ISIS, the non-Islamic state of Iraq and Sham. Not ISIS, not the Islamic state of Iraq and Sham, because why should we do the markets for them? Nothing that they do is Islamic. Nothing that they stand for is worthy of a state. So we call them ISIS. Now, a few years ago, we had this issue of ISIS. And these individuals, of course, are Nasibis. They hate the Ahlul Bayt. They hate the Shi'as. And now imagine you walking in the streets, for example, Peterborough or wherever you may be at the time. And there are these individuals who are nicest people. And they come to you in numbers. And you're not able to fight them alone. You're alone. You're not able to run away. So they corner you. There's, for example, 10, 20, 30 of them. And so at this time, you know that your death may be certain. You don't have any means to escape nor fight. But at the same time, you remember the story of HICTV, and you remember the dua that HICTV had recited. And you also recite the dua, وَأُفَوِّذُ فَسَتَذْكُرُونَ مَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِيَ إِلَى اللَّهِ, and I entrust all of my affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you know, Allah has promised that Allah will respond to you and He will protect you and He will make the plans of the enemies fail. And so in this situation, if you are to recite this dua, how do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps you? There's two ways that He can help you, right? The first way is He can give you some sort of weaponry, He can give you an equipment that you're able to fight your way out. Or even He could give you superhuman strength so that you're able to fight yourselves out. Or He could do something to the enemies. For example, make them go blind, demolish them, destroy them, make you invisible so that you're able to escape your certain death. These are the two things that He can do. But you know, whatever He does, He is going to protect you because you've just recited this dua. Same with the mu'min of Ali Fir'aun. What did I say? What is the most important thing within our lives? More important than wealth, health and children. It is our iman. Even if we were to die, as long as our iman is intact, we are the successful ones. Similarly, and although there are a very small number of traditions that state that Hizqeel was able to escape through the river Nile, majority of the traditions state that Hizqeel was killed at the hands of Fir'aun. In fact, Allama Tabatabai in his tafsir, known as Tafsir al-Mizan, narrates the following tradition from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and he says that Hizqeel, his body was mutilated. His body was cut into pieces. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him through protecting the iman that he had within his heart. Subhanallah. This is the pinnacle of what we mean to be successful in this world. There is no point having all of this wealth, health and children, etc. if we are able to go away from this world without our iman being intact. And so the fourth lesson that I would like you to all leave with, if nothing else, then the final lesson that I would like you to all leave with is the important thing that we can ever ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the safety of our iman that we should pray for day in, day out. And these were the four lessons, as part of summary in the topic titled Mu'min al Fir'aun, Hizqeel. We discussed four lessons. The first lesson is no matter what scenario, what situation, what circumstances you may be, the responsibility of staying true to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the faith lies with you and you alone. Secondly, we touched upon the concepts of Taqiyya and Tawriyya. Number three, we understood how different modes of propagation may be useful to the people, be it direct, indirect, through examples, through contemporary means, within our communities and of course, outside of our communities. And finally, the fourth lesson that we had discussed was to try and understand exactly what is the most important thing within our lives and how Hizqeel was able to die from this world after having saved his most important thing, which is no doubt our iman, our faith. And as a way of conclusion to understand the mission of Aba Abdullah, if we are able to look into the books of other historical books, it may seem that Aba Abdullah had what? 7,200 individuals against an army of 30,000. From a battle perspective, his army, short band of individuals, was completely destroyed and Yazid came out to be the victor. However, if we truly look at the mission of Aba Abdullah, if we truly look at the campaign of Aba Abdullah says, my Lord, I entrust, وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ, I entrust all of my affairs to you. And the Lord, merciful as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would respond to his servant Aba Abdullah saying, Oh Aba Abdullah, don't worry. Now you have sacrificed everything that you had for me and my religion. Now until the day of judgment, all of my power of this world is for you. And I shall ensure that your name remains alive till the day of judgment. And so, this is the mission of Aba Abdullah that we can see and understand from the mission of Mu'min of Al Fir'aun. And the story that I'd like to end with before we move on to the Musibah of tonight, and before we move to the Musibah of Ayaam Zainabiya, Hizqeel left behind a wife by the name of Siana al-Mashita. Siana was a hairdresser to the daughter of Fir'aun. You know the verse that I quoted, 45, chapter number 40, وَحَاقَ بِآلِ فِرْعَوْنَ سُوءُ الْعَذَابِ, that the people of Fir'aun will be enveloped with the severe punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Sadiq says, this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will envelope the daughter of Fir'aun. When the Holy Prophet was in Mi'raj, he says, I smell a very beautiful fragrance. And Jibreel says, this is the fragrance of the ashes of Siana and her children. Imam al-Sadiq had also been said that Siana will be one of those individuals that will return with the reappearance of the 12 Hujjah. And when she comes, she will support and tend to the wounded and the injured individuals. And so, Sianat al-Mashita, a hairdresser to the daughter of Fir'aun, was one day brushing her hair, where by accident, her brush falls onto the ground. And so when she's picking the brush up, she says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Fir'aun's daughter looks at her with rage in her eyes and she says, Oh Siana, when you say in the name of God, do you mean that of my father? So Siana looks at her and she says, no. I mean the Lord of your father, the Lord of myself, and the Lord and creator of everything that we see around ourselves. And so the daughter of Fir'aun goes to her father Fir'aun and complains to him. Now imagine, Musa alayhi salam's story has already happened, right? There's a rebellion, there's a revolution from the Banu Israel. Mu'min al-Fir'aun, HICTV, has already been killed and his body mutilated. And so Fir'aun's inner circle has already started to be desecrated, has already started to become tarnished. And so Fir'aun doesn't want to take no for an answer. And he truly wants to make an example of Siana. And so he brings Siana forward. And he says, Siana, I am giving you a final chance. Turn back to the religion of your forefathers and worship me as a Lord. Siana, firm in her faith, says, no, I cannot do that. And so Fir'aun calls upon a copper furnace, according to other traditions, boiling water or boiling oil. And he says, Siana, final chance, come back to the religion of your forefathers. She says, no. And so Fir'aun starts putting the children of Siana one by one into this boiling pot of oil. One after the other. Siana is looking at her children being massacred in front of her own eyes. One after the other. Everyone melting away into the boiling hot oil. In the final moment, Siana had an infant with her, had a toddler. And so the soldiers of Fir'aun snatch away this infant. And our minds, of course, automatically go to the 6-month-old Ali al-Asghar of Abu Abdullah. And at that time, they again put this infant into the boiling oil. But just before they do that, they ask Siana, Siana, final chance. Are you sure you don't want to turn back to me? And at that moment, the tradition said that Siana had a little bit of hesitation within her heart. But before she said, no, of course not, I am happy to stay in the path that I am in. At that point, the infant speaks out and he says, Mother, don't worry, we will be successful. And so Fir'aun boils every single child of Siana, and Siana also meets the same faith. And our minds, of course, go to the plains of Karbala, to another woman, to another lady, to another mother who had also sacrificed her entire lineage, had sacrificed all of her children, be it Sakina, be it Ali al-Asghar. And our minds go to Rabab on a night like this. And so we look at the animosity that they had towards Abu Abdullah, the animosity that the Banu Umayyah had towards Abu Abdullah did not just stop at the killing of Abu Abdullah. History testifies that when Habil was killed at the hand of Qabil, when he was buried, then that animosity between the brothers was also buried. But not in the books of Banu Umayyah. Not only do they kill Abu Abdullah, they loot his body, they take away his clothes, they take away his ring. Not only that, they pillage the tents, they burn the tents, and they focus all of their cruelty to this 4-year-old daughter of Abu Abdullah, known as Sakina. अज़ीज़ान गिरामी और सामीईन मोहतरम, मसाइब से पहले और इंशाअल्लाह आज चूँकि پہلی شب ہے ایام زینبیہ کی. دل چاہتا ہے کہ آج کے مصائب جناب سکینہ کے پرے جائے، لیکن عزیزان گرامی اس کے قبل کچھ الفاظ پیش کرنا چاہوں گا. شاعر آل محمد نے کیا خوب کہا ہے، جب بھی ذکر علی جب بھی بیاں ہوتا ہے، ذکر حسین ابن علی جب بھی بیاں ہوتا ہے، تو بغض چہرے ابلیس سے عیا ہوتا ہے. اور کیا عجب راز ہے ماتم شبیر میں، اور کیا عجب راز ہے ماتم شبیر میں، ہاتھ پڑتا ہے یہاں درد کہیں اور ہوتا ہے. عزیزان گرامی، آج ہم یہاں جمع ہوئے ہیں مولا حسین علیہ السلام کو یاد کرنے کے لیے. اگر شروع سے عزاداران امام حسین علیہ السلام کے آنسو اگر قطرے جمع کر دیے جائیں نا، تو 8واں سمندر بحر حسین بن جائے. یہ ماتم، یہ مجلسیں کل بھی زندہ تھی اور آج بھی باقی ہے. اس کو ختم کرنے والے خود ختم ہو گئے، لیکن نام حسین، مجلس حسین، ماتم حسین آج بھی باقی ہے اور قیامت تک باقی رہے گی. کیوں نہ باقی رہے، جس کو باقی رکھنے والا بقیت اللہ آج تک باقی ہے. زہرا کا نور عین زندہ ہے، جام بدر و حنین زندہ ہے. کہہ دو اس دور کے یزیدیوں سے کہ آج بھی ایک حسین زندہ ہے. شاعر آل محمد جناب میر تقلب نے کیا خوب کہا ہے، شبیر نے رکھا ہے تیرا نام سکینہ، شبیر نے رکھا ہے تیرا نام سکینہ، صدیوں کے برابر ہے تیرے کام سکینہ. غم سرور کا دیا ہے تو نے جلایا، غم سرور کا دیا تو نے ہے جلایا، اب شام میں ہوتی ہی نہیں شام سکینہ. عزاداران امام مظلوم کربلا، پرساداران سیدہ فاطمہ، آج دل چاہتا ہے کہ مولا حسین علیہ السلام کی 4 سالہ جو بچی ہے نا، اس پر مصائب ہو. سکینہ حسین کے دل کا چین، سکینہ ام رباب کے دل کا چین. ارے 2 ہی تو بچے تھے نا ام رباب کے، ایک اصغر اور ایک سکینہ. اصغر کو کربلا میں چھوڑ آئی اور سکینہ کو شام کے قید خانے میں اکیلا تنہا چھوڑ آئی. عزیزان گرامی، اگر آپ عرب میں جائیں گے نا، شام میں جائیں گے، تو وہاں نام رقیہ بتایا جاتا ہے. لوگ کہتے ہیں کہ آپ رقیہ کیوں نہیں بتاتے، سکینہ کہتے ہیں. عزیزان گرامی دیکھیں، نام پہ اختلاف ہو سکتا ہے، وجود پہ اختلاف نہیں ہے. تبری نے خود لکھا ہے، نام نہیں لیا لیکن اپنی تاریخ میں بتاتا ہے کہ مولا حسین علیہ السلام کے ایک 4 سالہ بچی تھی جو زندان شام میں انتقال کر گئی. ہاں عزیزان گرامی، آج کے مصائب جناب سکینہ کے. کون سکینہ؟ شمر کے تماچے کھانے والی سکینہ. کون سکینہ؟ جس کے کان بھی زخمی، جس کے رخسار بھی زخمی، جس کے کرتے کا دامن بھی جلا ہوا. عزیزان گرامی، ایک مرتبہ شام کے قید میں تاریکی تھی، رات کا وقت تھا، سکینہ سوئی ہوئی تھی. ایک مرتبہ خواب میں اپنے بابا کو دیکھتی ہے، بابا حسین کو دیکھتی ہے، تڑپ کر فرماتی ہے، بابا آپ مجھے کہاں چھوڑ دیے ہیں؟ بابا میں یہاں پہ نہیں رہنا چاہتی، بابا آئیے، آپ مجھے یہاں سے جلد لے جائیے. بابا آپ کے بعد شمر نے مجھے بڑے تماچے مارے ہیں، بابا آپ کے بعد میرے بالیاں چھین لی گئی، بابا آپ کے بعد میرے اوپر بہت ہی ظلم ڈھائے ہیں. بابا آپ کے بعد میں چچا عباس کو پکارتی رہی، اے چچا عباس، اے عمو عباس آئیے میری مدد کو، لیکن چچا عباس نہیں آئیے. بابا آپ مجھے یہاں سے لے جائیے، میں یہاں پہ نہیں رہنا چاہتی، بس بس ایک مرتبہ سکینہ کی آنکھ کھلتی ہے, نیند سے بیدار ہوتی ہے, فوراً اٹھ کے کہتی ہے اماں بابا تو یہی تھے, یہ تو زندان ہے, میں بابا کے پاس جانا چاہتی ہوں, یہاں پہ نہیں رہنا چاہتی. ایک مرتبہ بیبیاں رونے لگے, سکینہ نے اپنا خواب سنایا, آوازیں بلند ہوئی, یزید کی نیند پر خلل پہنچتا ہے. یزید کہتا ہے ارے یہ بیبیاں کیوں رو رہی ہے, یہ قیدی کیوں رو رہے ہیں؟ سپاہیوں نے کہا کہ ایک بچی ہے اپنے بابا کو بہت یاد کرتی ہے. یزید نے کہا ارے کس کی بچی ہے؟ کہا حسین کی بچی ہے. یزید نے کہا ارے ٹھیک ہے, حسین کا سر بیچ دو. ایک مرتبہ ایک سپاہی تشت لاتا ہے, اس تشت پہ مولا حسین علیہ السلام کا سر رکھا ہوا ہے, اور سر کے اوپر ایک کپڑا ڈھانکتا ہے چراغ کے ساتھ. زندان شام میں آتا ہے, جیسے ہی سکینہ نے سپاہی کو دیکھا, تشت کو دیکھا, چیخ کر پکاری ارے مجھے بھوک نہیں ہے, مجھے پیاس نہیں ہے, ارے مجھے کھانا نہیں چاہیے. بس جیسے ہی وہ سپاہی نے جیسے ہی وہ کپڑا اتارا گیا نا, تو سکینہ دوڑ کر اپنے بابا کے سر کو اپنی آغوش پہ لیتی ہے, چیخ کر پکارتی ہے بابا جب آپ خیمے سے گئے تھے تو آپ کے رگیں سلامت تھی, بابا آپ کی رگوں کو کس نے کاٹ دیا؟ ایک مرتبہ حسین کی شہزادی 4 سالہ سکینہ اپنا گال حسین کے رخساروں پر رکھ کے چیخ کر پکارتی ہے بابا مجھے یہاں پہ نہیں رہنا, بابا مجھے یہاں سے لے جائیے. بیبیاں کھڑی ہوتی ہے, ہلکا بنتا ہے, گریا شروع ہوتی ہے. کیا دیکھا, سکینہ گر گئی. عابد بیمار زنجیر میں جکڑے ہوئے قریب آتے ہیں. انا للہ و انا الیہ راجعون. پھپھی اماں میری سکینہ مجھے چھوڑ کر چلے گئی. بس ایک مرتبہ ہاتھوں میں ہتھکڑیاں, پاؤں میں بیریا, گلے میں خاردار توک, ننھی سی قبر کھودی. میرا دل کہنا چاہتا ہے کہ جب سید سجاد سکینہ کے لاشے کو اٹھائے ہوں گے نا تو عجب نہیں آواز دیے ہو بابا آپ کی امانت واپس لے لیجئے. آپ کا بچہ شرمندہ ہے کہ امانت ایسے واپس کر رہا ہوں کہ کان بھی زخمی ہی, رخسار بھی زخمی, کرتے کا دامن بھی جلا ہوا. اللہ اکبر. بہت ہی سال کے بعد, بہت ہی سال گزر گئے, سکینہ کی قبر میں پانی آ جاتا ہے. ایک مرتبہ کچھ سید زادیوں کی اور ایک سید دمشقی کی خواب میں سکینہ آتی ہے, کہتی ہے کہ دیکھیے میری قبر میں پانی آ گیا ہے, میری قبر کی تعمیر کیجئے. بس جیسے ہی قبر کھودی گئی نا تو سید زادیہ لحد میں اترتے ہیں, چیخ کر پکارتے ہیں وا مظلومتا وا مظلومتا. لوگوں نے پوچھا کیا ہوا؟ فرمایا کہ آئندہ وہ جو روایت ہے نا اہل سنت کی کہ یزید نے غسالہ بھیجا تھا, کفن بھیجا تھا کہ بچی کو غسل دیا جائے, بچی کو کفن دیا جائے, وہ کہتی ہے کہ آئندہ سے یہ روایت نہ پڑھیے گا. ہم نے دیکھا بچی اپنے کرتے میں دفنائی گئی تھی, اس کے کان میں خون کے زخم تھے, رخسار زخمی تھے, اور ہاتھوں میں رسیوں کے نشان تھے. اللہ اکبر. عزیزان گرامی, رونے کے لیے, ماتم کے لیے یہ جملہ کافی ہے کہ سارے اہل حرم رہا ہو گئے, مدینے چلے گئے, ان کے سوگ اتر گئے, لیکن آج بھی سکینہ شام کے قید میں یکو تنہا ہے, اپنے بابا کے سینے سے بہت دور, اور دبی دبی سسکیوں کی آوازیں آ رہی ہے بابا بابا بابا. الا لعنت اللہ علی القوم الظالمین. انا للہ و انا الیہ راجعون. وسیعلم الذین ظلموا ای منقلب ینقلبون. ماتم حسین. یا حسین
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں میں وارث تطہیر ہوں میں وارث تطہیر ہوں ناموس نبی ہوں اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں اے شام کے بازار سے دربار میں لے آئے ہیں مجھ کو چاہو تو جلا سکتی ہوں خطبوں سے میں تم کو صابر کی بہن ہوں جو میں صابر کی بہن ہوں جو میں خاموش کری ہوں اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں افسوس کنیزی میں اسے مانگ رہے ہو تم جس کے غلاموں کی غلامی میں رہے ہو یہ ظلم نہ ہوگا کبھی یہ ظلم ہوگا کبھی میں زندہ ابھی ہوں اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں تم اپنے پیمبر کو اگر دیکھنا چاہو نیزے پہ جو یہ سر ہے اسے غور سے دیکھو ہم شکل پیمبر ہے یہ ہم شکل پیمبر ہے یہ میں اس کی پھوپھی ہوں اے شام گو میں بنت علی ہوں اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں اور سے کٹھن ہوا کیا ہوگا میرے محبوب فضا کا طرفدار ہے دربار میں موجود میں پشت پہ فضا کے کھری میں پشت پہ فضا پہ کھری دیکھ رہی ہوں اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں زہرا کو بھی دربار میں تم نے تھا بلایا دربار میں بھی ہوں مگر فرق ہے اتنا پردے میں تھی وہ اور میں پردے میں تھی وہ اور میں بے پردہ کھڑی ہوں. اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں. شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں. زنجیروں میں جکڑا جو یہ بیمار کھڑا ہے, سجدہ اس کعبہ کی فصیلوں نے کیا ہے. منصب میں برا ہو ہے میں, منصب میں برا ہو ہے میں, رشتے میں بری ہوں. اے شام کے لوگ میں بنت علی ہوں. اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں. تم اپنے پیمبر کو اگر دیکھنا چاہو, نیزے پہ جو سر ہے اسے غور سے دیکھو. ہم شکل پیمبر ہے یہ, ہم شکل پیمبر ہے یہ, میں اس کی پھوپھی ہوں. اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں. اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں. میں وارث تطہیر ہوں, میں وارث تطہیر ہوں, ناموس نبی ہوں. اے شام کے لوگوں میں بنت علی ہوں. اے شام کے لوگوں
یا حسین 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 یا زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئی, زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں, زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئی, زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئی, زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئی, ہائے زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئی. سجاد کو ضعیف صدائیں یہ کر گئی, زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئی, زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں. لاشوں کو رسیوں میں جکر کر لیے پھرو, ہر لاشوں کو رسیوں میں جکر کر لیے پھرو, سیدانیاں تو گھر سے نکلتے ہی مر گئی, زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئی, زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئی, زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں. جاتی تھی جو کبھی کبھی زہرا کی قبر پہ، ہائے جاتی تھی جو کبھی کبھی زہرا کی قبر پہ، جانے خدا ہجوم سے کیسے گزر گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئے، ہائے زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں، رملائے پوچھتی تھی سکینہ سے قید میں، ہائے رملائے پوچھتی تھی سکینہ سے قید میں، زخمی ہے کان بالیاں بی بی کدھر گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئے، ہائے زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں ردائیں بازار لے کے جاؤ نا بے پردہ ظالموں، ہائے بازار لے کے جاؤ نا بے پردہ ظالموں، مر جائے گی حسین کی بہنیں اگر گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئے، ہائے زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں، لاشوں کو رسیوں میں جکر کر لیے پھرو، ہائے لاشوں کو رسیوں میں جکر کر لیے پھرو، سیدانی یا تو گھر سے نکلتے ہی مر گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئے، ہائے زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئی، سجاد کو ضعیف صدائیں یہ کر گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں اتر گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں کی ردائیں۔
الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم جميعا. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته، وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أنصارك وأوانك ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
اللهم قل لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقاردا وناصرا وتليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.